So first of all, I'm delighted to be here, and I hope that anybody who has any desire to talk to me about any aspect of entrepreneurship and women in science, please don't hesitate to email me. I'm a professor at Stanford. I'm in the Department of Surgery, the Division of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. I also have a PhD. And I run a research lab. And that's how I met Kirsten, because of some technology that we were developing within the lab. This was funded by the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine in its early stage. And then through Kirsten's work and at Stanford, this technology was then offered to venture capitalists. A group of venture capitalists asked me to start a company with them. I said, okay, let's do it. So it's not the typical way where you're looking for money. It sort of came to us. I realize how fortunate we are. I took a leave of absence from Stanford for 2 years to be the chief scientific officer. And I'll just fast forward and say the technology that we developed is now in phase 1 to be clinical trials with FDA approval for the start of that trial. I'm delighted to be here. And one word, persevere. Okay, I'll turn it over to the next person.
That's great, Jill. All right, Jennifer, and I do want to know to everyone, so I know each of these people through different things. So Jill, I know through my work at Stanford. Jennifer, I actually know because I interviewed her earlier this year, and obviously she's also a WashU professor. And I'm going to put in the chat a link to her interview that we did. So Jennifer.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. As Jill mentioned, I'm absolutely delighted to be here and be part of this group today. And equally, if people have questions or comments, I may not be able to answer them, but I can probably find somebody who can answer them for you. And that's perhaps one of the greatest things that I can do for anybody who has questions. As mentioned, my name is Jennifer Silva. I'm actually a professor of pediatrics, and I have an adjunct appointment in biomedical engineering. I'm a clinician, and I spend 2 days a week doing procedures on little people. I spend another day seeing them all in clinic. And then I guess the other 2 days is when I try to get everything else done. I founded Sentiar with my husband and co-founder and one of our other co-founders in 2016. We had our initial ideas in 2015. Since then, we have a whole battery of patents. We've been very fortunate to raise money through conventional routes. We've over $5 million in venture capital, which is regional, national, and international. But we've also raised money through SBIR funding. So we have a lot of facility and can talk eloquently about that if that's something that people want to discuss as well. We've also have an FDA approved product that is going to be having a commercial launch in Boston in Q1 of 2020. 2022. And we're really excited about that. So, and we're thinking about starting a second company because we love doing it so much. We thought, well, we should do this again. We can also talk about that and how we time manage all of these things. But thank you for having me.
Thrilled to have you here. And Sunny. So Sunny is one of the people who participated in Equalize last year, was one of our award winners, and she has just a terrific story to tell. Sunny, why don't you introduce yourself?
So hi, and I guess I should open with that I was really fortunate to have participated in Equalize 2020, and Elise Hoffman-Miller was my coach. And with no small part of that being her effort that we won the diagnostic prize last year. And so I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to speak with all of you again, and just kudos to every single participant and pitcher today. It's really hard, and I have to say, I think your class actually outdid our class last year. So good job, ladies. So I am a full professor of biochemistry at the LSU School of Medicine in New Orleans. I'm also the founder and CEO of Chosen Diagnostics, Inc., which is a spin-out company that led the competition last year. So Chosen was really born kind of to bring solutions for healthcare disparities to market. And our mission really was also on top of that, to ensure that profitable commercialization can open the door for others in really underserved biotech space. And so our initial focus was a deadly gut disease in preterm babies known as necrotizing enterocolitis, or NEC. It was identified nearly 200 years ago, and we still don't know who's going to get it, when they're going to get it, or if they're going to survive it. I think Equalize is really helpful in our journey and our growth, and in particular for me. And so we've raised 2.8 million to support the completion of the prototype build for NEC Detect, our maiden diagnostic product. And we believe this fall we'll be inking some deals to test it with strategic partners. And then also NEC Detect received a breakthrough device designation from the FDA in November 2020. And we're rocking and rolling, even though Hurricane Ida popped in. A couple of people have been privately chatting with me and asking me how things are going. Nothing like being a woman in science to teach you how to prepare for every possible contingency as you go along. And so we were secured, everything was backed up. We obviously had losses in terms of some of our personnel. And so we're doing our very best to stabilize them and bring them back fully on board. And so really it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and we're really honored that you are here and that you could make it today.
Oh, absolutely. Wouldn't miss it for the world.
That's terrific. Well, so I'm going to start off with individual questions for each of you. I've got some more general questions, but if our audience also has questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll review those and try to ask them. Whatever we don't get to as far as questions, we'll also send them to our panelists afterwards. So Sunny, I'm going to start off with you. I'm sure that our audience would love to hear about your time away from academia and focusing on chosen diagnostics, and what were the factors that went into your decision to focus on chosen diagnostics for the time being, and what would you recommend to anyone else weighing their options?
Yeah, so I think all of us probably have sat there. I think Jill alluded to it in her intro. If you start off in academics and you've aspired and pushed that hard to get there and continue to perdure through it, entrepreneurship almost seems like an imaginative leap. I would say for all of us, even though we're standing here doing it. And I decided to take a sabbatical from my academic role, and that was my time off. And I really felt like I needed to spend the time solely at Chosen to evaluate, if I want to put it this way, a hypothesis. Did I actually really have a role in the spin-out company? And how was I going to understand could I confer an advantage to the company? And what was my role and how was I going to straddle that with academics? So initially my sabbatical efforts were really focused on understanding whether or not there was the prototype design for NEC Detect was the most commercially viable. And so, but shortly after the sabbatical started, I realized I was still probably tinkering in an academic mindset. I really wanted to kind of play around with what pulleys and what gears can I modify biophysically, biochemically to get the best response. And when I realized that maybe I was falling into the same mental explorations that were comfortable to me, I decided to focus on whether or not I could come up with an intersect of 3 questions. So, and this is the advice I would give to everyone. So what are the 1 or 2 things that only you can do for your company at this time? Second, what's the 1 thing that you can do, and maybe only you can do, that's going to make the biggest difference in your commercialization prospects? And then third, what's the most doable or most achievable item at this time? And obviously, with all of us being in a pandemic, that answer is going to change quite a bit, right? So for me, the answer really made the rest of my sabbatical very purposeful and very directed toward commercialization and company-driven milestones. And so this is really what led us to the FDA Breakthrough Device Designation. It really helped me focus on understanding and getting validation about the scalability of our diagnostic platform for other medical indications. And so I viewed it as important. I have a clear understanding of what my role is in the company, and that I'm still comfortable in my academic role as well.
Good. Those are, and I think those are great questions for people to ask themselves. Jennifer, I had the privilege to interview you previously for this Founder Series that I mentioned, and I know the passion, grit, and long hours that have gone into creating Centaur. How did you know that this was the opportunity to pursue, and how did you figure out what help you needed along the way?
Yeah, I think, similar to what Sunny said, I think I started answering those questions, although perhaps in a little less of an organized fashion, right? I realized that for our company uses augmented reality and mixed reality for intraprocedural use. So for live cases. So I realized that I needed to be in live cases so that I could continue to figure out where the problems were. And I needed to be experienced enough to know that those problems weren't just a lack of not having done thousands of cases, right? It wasn't just a problem of being a first year attending or a second year attending. These were truly universal problems that my field experienced. And once I had that, that confidence that I could continue to add to that, it became very clear to me that we needed to pursue the company. We took a bit of a different approach. I actually never left the university. So, and granted, part of that is, as Jill will say, the fact that Washington University has a bit of a different position on this relative to some of our sister universities. But it can be done in our university, and that's exactly what we did. So we worked with our company, which we actually are consultants at, although we're co-founders and really drive the mission and the innovation of the company. But it allows us to sort of still stay immersed in the problem so that we're constantly seeking clinically relevant solutions that drive the value of the technology. And so when strategic partners ask me, okay, so when the time comes that you're ready, you're ready to exit this company and somebody's going to come in and buy your IP, what are you going to do? And my answer is always very clear. The value I bring is that I can identify clinical problems. The minute you take that away from me, I don't know that I'm much different than other people that you can hire off the street. And so for me, it's always trying to find this balance. And that's the trick, the balance of remaining a clinician, remaining a proceduralist, remaining an entrepreneur. So it just happened to intersect at the right time in my career, and I was grateful for it. And grateful to be around people who helped educate me that was where my value in fact lived.
Yeah, finding that right time and then the right people to help you is so critical.
Sure.
To that. Those are great takeaways. So Jill, I'm going to go on to a question to you now. As you mentioned, we go back almost a couple of decades. And I do remember when you were contemplating starting this company, what were the factors that played into your deciding to take the route of a startup versus perhaps, licensing to a larger company? And what was the biggest obstacle you faced, and how did you overcome it with regards to going this startup route?
Well, Kirsten, I think I'm unusual in this regard. I think the story that I'm going to tell you in a nutshell was that the decision to move towards a startup was made because I had deep faith in and trust in the people who were interested in moving this into a startup. So it began with that. So this was Avalon Ventures in San Diego. And I believe that that one of the partners of Avalon,
one of the mentors is from Avalon. Yes,
he's on here.
Yeah.
So one of the venture capitalists from this group, Kevin Kinsella, literally sat on the couch in my office about once a month for about 4 years, talking to me about this project. So he no longer was somebody on the outside. He really was somebody I was having a conversation with. I understood how he thought. I understood the questions he asked. I was aided by the fact that my husband is an investor. And so he has a background in business, and he could say, well, this is unusual. And so I had a real relationship with these people. So when the idea was floated, let's start a company, I thought, yeah, of course. Now, what's the biggest challenge? I guess in like everything, right? I think when you move into unfortunately, Stanford does not have the same rules as WashU. You either are a professor at Stanford or you are working at a company, and you can't have two bosses. So for me, it was taking a leave of absence. And maybe the biggest challenge was just recognizing how much there was to learn and how I could really turn to experts throughout the industry to guide me. And I spoke with one of my mentors, who is the vice president. He was a vice president of Amgen. He had just retired from that position, and he became my co-founder of this company. And I asked him, why don't you work with more academicians and help them move ideas from academics into industry? And he did not miss a beat when he said, they think they know everything already. So yeah, Jennifer's nodding her head. Yeah. If you have the sense that you already know how to move an idea into a commercial product and you are in academics, I invite you to learn the vast landscape of new information. And frankly, it's been a fantastic journey. I've loved every second of it, even the most trying.
Well, so and that just led right into my next question so beautifully. I'm not sure if you set that up or not, because my next question was actually about the differences between running a lab versus being involved in a company. Like, what are the major differences, and what do you know now that you weren't even aware of before? So I'm going to start off with you, Jill, and then we'll go through everyone on this one.
Okay. Boy, that's like a softball question. In a company, it's all about the critical path. In a lab, you can say, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that does. Or I wonder, oh, let's play around over in this area. In a company, it is this on the critical path? If the answer is no, leave it to the side. Focus, focus, focus. And I will tell you, Kirsten, when I came back from this wonderful 2 years at Oncasa, I redid my lab. My lab has a completely different arrangement compared to before I left. And it's all about focus, and where do you want to get to? So I would say that having that great experience in industry, working with people who really understand that commercialization process, really informed how we do science today, which has led to more technologies that we've developed. So I think I learned a lot. Focus, critical path. That's my message.
That's terrific. Sunny.
Yeah, I think everyone in this room is familiar with this, that in an academic lab, they have a different charter than for a company or a commercialization effort. And so for a university lab or a university setting, it's the science is the key, right? You're looking for the frontier, the edge of science knowledge as we know it, and you want to extend it without limit. And you don't really necessarily worry about its scalability. And that's an absolutely essential component of what we do. It's necessary. But you're really developing a unique technology or set of skills within your academic house that belongs to your operating unit. But for a company, as Jill kind of alluded to, the hallmark is really focusing on what you have to do to build a product with broad potential applicability. And also that product has to be able to operate in as many different business units as possible. And so those two things in tandem are really very different in the way you have to organize your brain, your time, your effort. But also, as Jill said, I have to say, whether chosen makes it down the road or does not make it down the road, and statistically it should not, it does inform quite a bit of how I do science now in the academic realm. And so for me, I'm sitting on a review panel for grants, and these poor people, because it's me, I'm thinking about the scalability, right? What is from a very different angle. And so some of those questions and some of the filters become actually much more pragmatic as well as fanciful, right? You either want that home run that nobody has ever considered, that unicorn, or you really want to understand why they're developing a unique niche in the basic sciences as well. So they do cross-inform each other quite a bit. And I agree, I've benefited tremendously from being on both sides.
That's great. Jennifer.
So I run a clinical lab as opposed to a basic science lab. So let me tell you how this is different. I've spent a lot of time as I develop medical devices, thinking about things like human factors and usability, regulatory paths, reimbursement, which is the downstream end of where many of us are thinking that are probably on this call today, but they're equally important. And if we don't start thinking about them now, we will find that we missed some opportunities that were open to us earlier. How has that influenced the way we do now, what we do in our lab? We have a totally different appreciation of regulatory science. And what we've done is we've actually taken the opportunity to say to the FDA, you know what? You guys need a little bit of grounding in what it's like on our end. And so we've actually forged a lot of relationships with FDA. My partner joined the FDA as a medical officer. I mean, that concretely, right? To say we need to have better communication between clinicians and FDA, and this is how we're going to go about doing it. We're going to make these relationships. We're going to invite you to come out to our lab and see how things are actually done. How do things actually work on the ground? All well and good to have an indication for use. But let me show you what that actually looks like. We engage in things like the Medical Device Innovation Consortium. So instead of just saying, yeah, MDIC is this great thing out there, we're going to start getting deeply involved, and we're going to put people on working groups and writing committees so that we can help influence how these things happen, rather than being the baby bird recipients on the other end screaming that the FDA is coming to get us. I mean, often it feels like they are, but if we can teach them why they shouldn't just be coming to get us, but rather that this should be a partnership with the end goal being the best thing for our patients, then it changes the whole dynamic. And so we've flipped that on its head around here, and not just in our electrophysiology laboratory, but in our interventional cardiology laboratory as well, and tried to make this more of a safe space to have some of those questions asked and answered that we would normally think, oh, that's the stupidest question in the world, but FDA might not know what that is. And conversely, I'm sure they look at us and they're like, well, that's clearly written in guideline 606, whatever. And I was like, I did not know such a thing existed. Can you point me in that direction? So we've had that unique experience from this as well.
Yeah. I'm going to move on to networking now because that came up. I mean, we already have talked a little bit about it. It came up during Jane Muir's opening presentation. A lot of, obviously, Equalize is focused on people getting to know each other, getting your network built up. But what kind of role did networking has it played in your innovation journey, and what recommendation do you have for those who are here today as far as how to help with their network and kind of get the people in who really can help them with what it is that they need to do? And Jennifer, I'm going to start with you this time.
Okay. So I don't know that you know who can help necessarily. So I think to have as broad a network as possible, and then to not be afraid to ask for help. Some relationships need more time and energy, particularly when you know that those are going to be those mission critical relationships. Jill was talking about somebody sitting on her couch every month for 4 years. Clearly that was a critical relationship, right? That needed time and nurturing and all of that attention paid to it. But sometimes I just look through my LinkedIn and I'm like, you know what? I need to find somebody who works at this company. And I zip down the line and I'm like, all right, you're 3 people away from you. Let's see if I can make this happen. And you just need to just try, right? It is about trying. Sometimes it won't work, but you'd be surprised. I'm always surprised by how, if you humbly ask for help, how people are so willing to say, if I can't help you, let me put you in touch with somebody who can. And so I think that building that network as big and broad as you can, never knowing where that next critical person is going to be is actually going to be very important.
When you were talking about that, Jennifer, all I was thinking was Jill's word, persevere.
Correct.
Persevere. Jill, I'll go to you next on the networking.
Okay, well, amen to what Jennifer said, and beautifully stated. You know, I will just tell a little vignette about networking. I went to a CERM sponsored meeting in San Diego, and it was business people on the first day and scientists on the second day. And I went to the business part meeting. Everybody's got their name tags on, their hand is out. Hello, it's nice to meet. That's back when we touched each other. You remember that? Eager to talk. How do I know you? How might I know you? How might I help you? Network, network, network. The next day, I go to the scientific session. The badge is under the coat. When people are like this, they just, I don't know, what is it? It's just not part of maybe some of the DNA of people who are sort of scientists. I think as I'm also a clinician, but I think that changes a little. I would say exactly what Jennifer said. Reach out, and boy, follow the edict of all business people, and they know the power of the network. I'll stop there and give Sunny some time to enlighten us as well.
I don't know if enlighten's the right word. I guess I have to defend PhDs here right now. Yeah, we're a nerdy bunch. We like to just live in our heads and contemplate. And I am most happy in sweatpants, a t-shirt, and a cup of tea and the door closed. Okay, but that also comes from being, for me, an introvert and a very severe one. So it took quite a while for me to understand, one, how to utilize and subvert my own biases or tendencies, but that two, I don't have to necessarily be an extrovert. I just have to be enough of an extrovert with a whole bunch of introvert, right? In order to network and get what I want or get what I need, or figure out, oh, I didn't even know I needed that. And oh, I'm glad I opened my mouth and took a risk. So the general rule of thumb, I think that both Jennifer and Jill have brought up is, if you've done, some of you have mentioned that you've participated in I-Corps. The first thing they tell you when they used to do it in person, and it's probably a little ironically easier now in the era of COVID, but when you had to do it in person, if you called or emailed 10 to 20 people, you'd be really lucky if one of them answered you and said, okay, I'll talk to you, right? But that kind of frequency also, if you want to put it this way, if you're a PhD mindset, occurs in your experiments. You got to try 10 different things. You got to try it at least 10 times before it's going to work, even a little bit, right? And the more you do it, the more experience you're going to get and the more knowledgeable you are about who you're talking to or what kind of information you didn't even know you needed, but you're going to extract out, okay? So all of these things are, I think we're all agreeing, whether you're on the clinical or the research end of this world, that networking is important. And often it's looking at the constellation of stars and not knowing what you're looking at. But guess what? There's patterns in there, and somebody else can guide you on what those patterns are. And so you don't have to just blindly walk through a universe that you don't understand. Networking is important. And whether you're shy or you're not shy, go for it, ladies.
I loved what you said. So being a shy person and also being a person who loves the phrase, don't know what you don't know. I think that's come up with so many people throughout entire Equalize today is, and I'm going to ask each one of you, what didn't you know when you started this process, this innovation journey, that you wish you had known? And so what piece of information therefore would be helpful perhaps to this audience? And Sunny, I'll start with you.
I think all of us, if you're a woman in particular in academics, you know that there's a cost for trying to be the boss, right? And I think we've all learned that climbing successive ladder rungs requires a lot of work and effort. But at the end, if you haven't realized it yet, I figured out kind of late in this game that I'm capable of more than I know. I can sit here and blithely blow off Hurricane Ida and tell you everything's fine and we've got it under control, but I'm pretty sure this room understands all the effort that had to have gone in to make sure that that occurred, with any small statistical probability, right? So the challenge is here, you all are capable of more than you know. And so if you feel this calling to delve into the entrepreneurship world and create a larger impact, a profitable impact, a more maybe palpable impact, then do it. And don't be afraid of being wrong or that you're not good enough. You are good enough.
That's great advice. Jill.
Man, Sunny, you took the words out of my mouth.
Sorry.
This tendency, I think it's in our mother's milk or so, but this tendency that we have to defer, to allow somebody else to run things, to take an idea and say, well, let me be the face of that idea because, I have more pull, or I'm better connected than you are. I'm more senior. I get, the list could go on. Ignore that voice and claim ownership of your great idea and work as hard as you can towards making that happen. But don't just pass it off because, well, somebody else is a better speaker or somebody else has more connections, they're more senior, I don't know, they have a penis, whatever it is that gives them some, better skill set. And if I had known that, I really internalized it. I think it would have made the early days easier. By the time I was talking to Kevin and the venture group, nobody even thought about the men that were saying, oh, you can't do these kinds of things. We should be the leaders of this. They didn't even talk about them. So that was on me. And my internal dialogue about, oh, well, I want to give it its best shot, so maybe I'd turn it over to somebody else. Baloney. Do what Sunny says. Own it.
Great. Jennifer.
So I have some practical things that I wish I had known. I wish I had known the time commitment that this would be, particularly when trying to straddle both an academic career and entrepreneurship. I learned to ask for help loudly and vocally. And I learned, and you would have thought that I would have known this earlier, I learned the importance of a good team and when to ditch a bad one. Because I've worked on both kinds, and I've had both kinds in both sides of my life, both at the hospital and in the company. And there's this saying, fail fast, fail cheap. That's true. And when you see the team going astray, make changes, make them fast. Your intuition is often right, and make the change before it kills the company, or even worse, kills your love for your company. And surround yourself with a team that's going to build you up and support you, not people who are going to say, oh, I need to present this because I am, but rather a team that's going to say, this is a clinical audience. We should put clinicians in front of that. This is an engineering audience. Let's put engineers in front of that. These are VCs. Let's put entrepreneurs in front of that, and really build each other up. And when you do that, the company by nature starts succeeding because people can see that.
Yeah. This was, so I'm going to wrap up because we now have gone over time, but you guys are just all so inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing this. I wrote down a few things that I'm just like, I need to be following these all the time. So one, perseverance, persevere, get through things, focus, the focus that it takes to really concentrate on your innovation, getting it out and starting its commercialization journey, the time involved in managing your time and being organized that's associated with it, the forging relationships and going out there and just trying it. Like, people will respond, and people do want to help you. And just don't be afraid of asking for help. If someone can't help you, they'll let you know. or that they just won't respond. And there's nothing lost on that. The don't know what you don't know, and figuring out people who can help you know what that is. Definitely things move fast, and you need to listen to your intuition. And when something doesn't feel right, you need to listen to that as well. So this was just so valuable, I think, for everyone. Thank you all for joining us today and sharing your journeys. And I'm just gonna give you a big clap right here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for having us.
Kristen.